I'm just doing my mask because I'm packing up and, I'm moving. And so the broker told me I'm closing November 2nd. So she said, well, if you could be out by then, I said, okay. And, I suppose the pandemic was sort of like a godsend because I had all this quilt stash and, I made so many masks. I've been giving it to my friends and, just giving it, I'm giving it to certain local businesses in Brookline, for their staff or for their customers, because we want to help our local businesses, okay? And I've been sending away to friends. So, you know what? I got rid of all of it. I mean, it went to a really good use and good cause.
Excellent.
So
Excellent.
I'm not starting any new projects because I have to pack my stuff.
Very good.
Oh, yeah, maybe something, but, it's just a small thing. Yeah.
Right. So I've been working with Karen over the weekend. We're trying to figure out how to mend the hole in her dress. And we talked about embroidering something on top of it. So I'll show you, I made a little video that, that we can talk over. Try to get this up, here it is. Okay. So here you can see where it's blue. Do you see this mesh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see it.
Okay, so this is the water-soluble canvas to help you do cross stitch. And this is the design that she had hoped to do, but a couple things turned out to be problematic. For one thing, this is 4 inches square, more or less. So it's about 4 inches, which is pretty big. It's longer than your middle finger. And so that's too big, really, for where she wants to put it. So, and it's also kind of complex because roses have all these different little petals. And to depict that, you do a lot of color changes. So this is the one we decided to use instead. And I shrank it down so that it's only 2 inches across, which is a better fit for the place where she wants to put it. And again, it's got some nice color changes, but the color changes are less important. You could, in fact, do each petal with just one solid color if you wanted to. You don't really have to do all these little color changes, but the reason you do those color changes is to give it more texture, more depth. So what I'm going to do is transfer this pattern onto the mesh. And I only have sort of brighter colors of pens, and I'm trying to come up with 4. You can see we have 4 different colors of pink and 2 colors of yellow and orange in the middle. So yellow and orange here in the middle, and then somehow we need to do 1, 2, 3, 4 different pinks. So I'm coming up with enough pens to do that. And we'll make a little key for what color is depicting what.
Oh.
Yeah. All right. So now what I've done is I had shrunk that picture down to the size that we want, the 2 inches across. And I put the canvas on top of it and put it onto a piece of white paper. And I'm taping it to the paper so it doesn't move around. And you can see that it could have been a design that you drew. It doesn't have to be a prefabricated design. But you can see right through this canvas, so you can trace it pretty easily.
Sorry, how can you trace it? It doesn't look like you can see through.
Well, that's what we're going to do right now. You'll see me doing it here. So I'm taking the lightest yellow and I'm just marking right on top of it. the canvas is there. Just every once in a while you can see little bits that show that the canvas is on top of it. And so I'm marking on the canvas the places where we want the yellow. And now the orange. And the colors are not true here. The idea is to mark it to be the guide, not to actually be the right color. Okay, so they just need to be distinctive so you can tell them apart. And what I'm doing is wherever the mesh crosses, that's where your X is going to be. You're going to be making your X's over that sort of bridge where they come together. So all I have to do is mark that bridge. And if this were a painting or something that you had done yourself, the fact that it's on the canvas now is creating the guide that we need.
Who's drawing that picture of the
Me.
flower?
That's me. I recorded this last night because I knew it. I didn't have my act together. You've never done this before on camera. So I thought, well, I just wouldn't mess around with it live. It would be easier if I could edit it. Good morning, Janet.
Hi, is anyone else here?
Yes? Yes.
Oh, great. I'm sorry I'm late.
No problem. There's 6 of us right now. And what I'm doing on camera here is I'm transferring a pattern onto this, washable mesh canvas.
Oh,
So if you look for the bright spots, you can kind of see that the canvas is on top. It feels like plastic, but it's actually water-soluble canvas with little holes in it so that you can use it as a guide for cross stitch. And I'm transferring this pattern that Karen chose onto the mesh so she can use it to mend her dress. Now, because I didn't have enough different shades of pink, I decided not to worry about that. And you can see I'm using green to be one of the lighter shades of pink. Just
Green
so
is
that
the
you can
lightest
tell them
shade?
apart. From at this point, all we need is just to mark it so that we can tell them apart. So
So-
wherever it's green, we're going to put that second to the lightest pink. And that pen's being a little stubborn.
But what are you going to use for the lightest pink?
I think I have a blue. So it's beginning to take some shape here. There's a lot of this color. So the main thing is just to make sure that the canvas gets marked where you want those X's. And the reason I have the white paper underneath it is to be a kind of blotter, because of the holes, a lot of the ink is going right through that canvas and onto the paper. But my objective in doing this is to color the mesh, to color the canvas, so that you'll know where to put your X.
Looks like they're all pretty complicated, but I guess if they're not complicated, they'll just look like a blob. Some of them look more like blobs. So this one looked nice.
Well, we're not doing, this is not the finished work. This is just marking the canvas. So if you think in terms of paint by number, this is essentially paint by number.
Right.
And we're just marking the pattern. It's as if you're creating the blank canvas with the numbers on it. You're not putting the paints yet. We're just telling you where to put the paints. Okay.
Karen, have you ever
And those
done
are good.
cross stitch?
No, no, I have never done cross stitch. I've done paint by number though.
I've done paint by number 2 when I was a child.
Well, I don't know. Cross stitch, you have to have a very good visual field for what you're doing when you don't have the picture or pattern exactly to put on the dress.
Or a diagram to do it with, like knitting, might be more easy. You won't have the diagram, so you have to do what is true what you said, Karen.
Well, now you still have the chart. Remember, I showed you the chart before and I'll show it to you again, but you still have the chart that you can use to guide you. And you'll have these markings on the canvas to guide you.
So have many of you done this cross stitch before? What did you make?
I've never done cross stitch. I've done
I did.
embroidery.
Yeah, I did cross stitch years ago, but it was mostly like Christmas ornaments that we sold at the church fair. I just did small projects, not anything big.
You know, I know when I was 14, I did some embroidery. I haven't done embroidery for a very long time. I know I made a sweater, a green not green and purple, not purple, lavender sweater, and I embroidered some leaves on the sweater, about 4 of them in the front.
Okay, so it's beginning to look like it's almost finished here.
I cut out a tree in a house, but I don't know. I didn't know how to cut it out so that it would be a shape to have the 4th inch on the side. So it's 2 squares at the moment.
And you have the patterns that I sent you.
There's
Yeah.
2 oblong squares. Is that Karen joined
So
that picture of the flower?
Now you can see I'm taking the mesh off, and you can see what I mean about we painted the bumps in the mesh. Now you can see the mesh better. And this is like the blotter. It's taken the extra ink that went through the holes. And here's your pattern again, and I made it this little guide so you know what colors they are. 4 pinks from lightest to darkest. And that's
That looks like
color
a embroidery thing, something you're supposed to embroidery with a needle and thread.
correct.
It is?
Yes. So that's your pattern. So you would take this pattern and baste it where you want it to be. So your hole is like in the middle. We're gonna make this decoration so that the hole disappears. And so you baste it around just to keep it from wiggling. And then do your embroidery, and then take the basting out and wash off the fabric. Well, basting, you just make a big running stitch just to keep it from wiggling.
Right.
First, you center the pattern on top of your hole,
Uh-huh.
and then you can just put pins around it.
Okay.
But it'll be much easier to deal with if you just sew it instead of the pins. So
Okay.
just the way you would put a pin in, you just run a stitch a big long stitch. It doesn't matter how beautiful it is at all. The whole objective is to hold it in place. So the other thing that we did this week was Betty came over and we worked a little bit on the wonderful new quilt that she has going. And I wanted to show you a little bit about how that looked. And I'll start with one that I had going before. This is a quilt I've been working on. It's these are fabrics by Case Bassett. I don't know if you know the name, but he is one of the men quilters who he designs quilts and makes them and sells them. And I put it up on my wall as I'm making it. You can see it's not assembled here. This is just, anyway, this is the quilt that I was in the process of making. And take a look at it. This is supposed to be randomized. And I always find that an interesting word because random in quilting is not totally random. It's sort of scientific randomization, if you will. So tell me, with what you see here on the wall, is there anything that you would change about the way those squares are arranged?
I like the fluorescent blue altogether. It kind of highlights the patterns in the middle, but then it kind of is nice that it doesn't highlight the patterns in the middle because then it's some variety.
I know this quilt here that I'm looking at, this quadruple quilt, was done randomly,
Yeah, here's the part that I was honing in on. And when I put it up there, this is what struck me. I have each one of these pattern squares has a little border on it, and these two have the same border. So when you talk about randomization, if it's truly random, that will happen. But in this case, we really don't want that to happen, right? Because it brings too much attention to these two. So I decided it needed to be changed. And I thought if I move this one down here and put the other one up, then you see what I mean? It's much more truly random.
I like the green with the hot pink. It looks kind of neat. I like the combination.
So that's what I mean about moving things around. You can just by making that one change, you've increased the randomization, if you will, and kept it from bringing the eye too much to this particular area. And the other thing I did was, as I was building it, I was doing them square by square and putting them up on the wall. But then as I got farther down, I realized that in order to keep it varied the way I wanted it, I should organize my colored squares first and then decide what border to put on them based on the other things that were around them. So that's why you see me sort of filling the gaps here with just the colored squares. And I'm going to worry about the borders later, but I'm dealing with one thing at a time. So I'm choosing my border color second. So we're starting to get there. It's still not put together. It's beginning to look like something. And here I'm deciding which border color to put on here. So what would you do? What would you do for a border color for this polka dotted square based on the other things around it? You can see I've got.
How about a light green? You don't have a light green in there yet. The
This
hot
is a light green.
No, the hot green, the more fluorescent green. You don't have one of those in there yet.
I think I would like a darker.
You could do darker or lighter green because you have the lightest green, but then you have also more of a hot green that's not in there, and maybe a darker green that's not in there.
So this is the one I chose, is the darker green.
Oh, yes.
this one being so light. Even though this one's close by, it didn't seem to be a problem. Okay, so now let's talk about Betty's quilt. So, so keeping that in mind, that we have color balance issues, what do we want to put where, becomes important when you start putting the quilt together. Most of the work we've done so far has been on blocks. So you work on the block, but then at some point they come together as a quilt. So this is one of Betty's beautiful blocks. And the first thing I had to do was to square them up. So you decide on the size. I looked at all the blocks together and sort of chose the optimal size for the designs. And now I'm trying to square them up. So notice that on my board, there are some lines that are darker than others. They're more prominent. So what I did here was to put her block on my table along those lines so that I knew exactly where the middle was. And then I've laid my ruler. We're squaring to 15 inches square. This is a 6-inch ruler. Half of 15 is 7.5, right? So I've taken the 6-inch ruler and laid it 1.5 inches from that center point. So now I know I have 7.5 inches, and I'm going to square it down that line. So I'm going to do each of the sides that way, always working from the middle to make sure that when I square it up, this point is always in the middle. And these lines are perpendicular to each other. Okay. And now we're pinning them on the wall. So this is the only wall in my house that was big enough to put a bed quilt on. It's in an awkward position, as Betty can attest. It's a sort of narrow hallway, but nonetheless, it works. And what I've done is I hung just a flannel sheet from the top of the wall. It's been there for 20 years. But it serves me well, and we can pin things to it. If they're small enough, they hang, but once it's a block that heavy, they have to be pinned. But you can see, we start to see it now as a quilt, and you can start to see where the colors are. Like these are yellow. There's some that are more yellow. There's some that are more blue. And there's some that are more brown. And some of them are kind of busy, and some of them are kind of plain. So those are the characteristics we're going to look at and say, what would we keep, what would we move?
Janet, are you impressed? I went from sewing hot mats to
Isn't that amazing? So
Janet, I'll never forget you showing me how to sew hot mats. So.
yeah.
I've never done a stack and whack. It looks like fun. Did you enjoy making it?
No, and at the very beginning, Joyce will tell you, after doing like 3, I was walking to the senior center. I'm going, I'm gonna tell Joyce, give me some. I don't want to do this anymore. So, and it's seriously, I did tell Joyce. And then by my 4th one, it was like, I can do that. I said, Joyce, I was seriously gonna quit this. So, and then it was like, and then when Joyce gave it to me when the senior center closed, I felt I was able to concentrate more. I didn't feel like I was like really pressured. I was able to kind of sit there and, like play with it and, well, how can I do this so I don't have to sew a piece and go iron it? And so I got my own system down, and it moved a lot quicker. So.
Good. Yeah. Yeah, most quilters have loved the pandemic. like forcing them to sit in their sewing room.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Leah contacted me this week. She was trying to find sewing machine needles, and everybody is out of stock on sewing
Ah.
machine needles. Even Amazon was out of stock.
Wow.
I have some, so I gave her some. So the other thing we played with is borders. Well, what might we put around it? We're going to put some black snatching in here, so it'll be a little bit more muted than it looks now, because there will be a strip of black between each of these. They'll be a little farther apart, but this at least we can do the color balance decisions here. And then when we put borders around it, which borders and what sequence, like we did last week with my other quilt. Here's another possibility. Whoops, I thought I had another one. Oh, I know, I took a picture, but I didn't actually show it. But we could put the yellow one first and the blue one in the middle and the brown farther out. So there's different ways that we can arrange those that might complement it better. Your thoughts?
I think the blue should probably be next to the blocks because it's going to really be popping the colors. That's just my own opinion, either the blue or the gold.
Or you could put the bottom right one that looks the least busy. You could put that one in the center because, you know, so people would see it because it's sort of less busy and it will like make the others pop out more that's next to it.
That's an interesting thought, yeah.
Yeah, when I was working with Joyce, I was saying yellow first because there wasn't enough yellow blocks. I think there might have been only like 4, no more than 5 out of the 20. And then what do? We said yellow, turquoise, and brown last.
Right.
I think that's, yeah. Yeah, so if you look at it, you know, this way, so.
So that's one way to trial the borders. I just cut a 3-inch strip of each of these to hang up so that we could move them around more easily. And seeing them with the quilt itself makes a big difference. If you did it with any one of those blocks, you might make a different decision. So those decisions I always make toward the end, once you get it together. And that's another advantage of doing things like electric quilt that we did online, is because you get a vision of what the total quilt might look like. But with a stack and whack, it's always different, always different. My sister, who makes a lot of these, it says that she never makes the borders decision until she's got the design area together, because it always changes. Any other questions or comments about that?
Uh-huh. How many houses do you have? You were looking for 12, I think. 3 or 4.
We have at least 12 right now, but the more the merrier. And we'll, you know, if we need to, whatever quilt we can make, we'll make a quilt out of it.
I'll make one this weekend.
Super, thank you. Yeah, I'm going to cut it off in about 2 weeks, and we'll just declare it done. All right. Well, I think that's about all I have for today. If anybody else has anything else.
Okay, it was good to see everybody, so.
Thank you, Betty,
Take
for the
care.
wonderful, wonderful blocks. I'm really enjoying working with them.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. thank you, Joyce, for, instilling that confidence in me.